This happened several summers ago, when I was still living in my childhood home with my parents. I was 17. One random weekend, my parents went away for a few days without taking me with them, which was pretty much unheard of. They're the kind of people who are always at home, constantly keeping the house in order and rarely ever taking time away for themselves. In all my years living there, I couldn't remember a single time they'd ever gone away together like that. Naturally, I decided to take advantage of the rare opportunity, and I invited over MJ, my girlfriend at the time, to spend the weekend. It felt like a once-in-a-lifetime chance to have the house to myself without any interruptions. MJ had this playful, devious side to her that made every moment feel a little more exciting than it should have been. Admittedly, that's one of the reasons why we didn't work out, but I'm not going to open that can of worms right now. Knowing her, I should have been able to predict what was going to happen that night. As soon as she saw my heated pool glowing away in the backyard, her eyes lit up with a spark of mischief. She told me we should skinny dip, grinning like it was the most obvious idea in the world. I told her my neighbors would see, but she pestered me and made the very good point that we'd probably never get the chance again. We had gone swimming many times, but had never done something that devious before. At least I hadn't. I was always the well-behaved, polite kid growing up. Even now, I sometimes scold myself for being too nice. Anyway, it took a lot of convincing for me to agree, but MJ had a way about her. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and before long we were in the pool laughing and splashing under the night sky. It was actually a really romantic moment, as cheesy as that sounds. The water was warm against the cool summer air, and everything felt perfect, almost surreal. Let me quickly describe the house. The pool was right outside the large bay windows that overlooked the living room. Because it was so dark outside and the lights inside were still on, we had a perfect view into the house. It was like looking into a dollhouse. I'm sorry if that doesn't make sense, but if you saw a picture, you'd get what I'm talking about. For a while, that view made me feel safe, like we were still connected to the house, even while we floated outside in our own little bubble. That comfort didn't last long, though. At one point, as MJ was talking about something, I don't even remember what, I glanced up at the windows and froze. I saw the last thing I expected to see. On one of the far living room walls was a shadow. It was faint, but distinct, and I knew it was definitely a shadow because of how it was moving. I watched in horror as it moved out of sight, like someone was walking deeper into the house. My heart started pounding. I felt a surge of panic, but I didn't want to scare MJ. I whispered to her that we needed to get out of the pool. She didn't question me. She just quickly followed my lead as I tried to get out of the pool and dry off as discreetly as possible. I told MJ to hide in the pool house, turn off the light, and stay completely silent until I came back. Her playful demeanor was completely gone. I could tell she was freaking out, but she was doing a really good job keeping it together. She nodded and slipped into the pool house without another word. I opened the back door as quietly as I could and stepped into the kitchen. I was going to handle the situation myself. That's just how my parents had raised me. I grabbed a knife off one of the cutting boards and started moving through the house. Someone had definitely been in there. That much was obvious. I started noticing small, subtle signs that didn't make any sense to me. A chair in the dining room was slightly pulled out like someone had been sitting there. A picture frame on the wall was crooked. A coffee mug I didn't remember using was sitting on the counter. Stuff like that. Stuff that no rational robber would ever waste time doing. As I moved through the house, I started considering the possibility that it wasn't a robber I was looking for. My heart rate must have been insane at that point. I thought I was going to be tackled every 5 seconds, but nothing ever happened. I checked every room on the ground floor, but I didn't find anyone. All the doors were locked and all the windows were shut tight. It didn't make any sense. If someone had been inside, where were they now? The more I wandered around the house, the more my masculine bravado disappeared. At one point, I just got fed up and decided to call the police. They arrived quickly and did a thorough search of the house and yard, but they didn't find anything either. No signs of forced entry, no footprints in the backyard, nothing. They couldn't even come up with a legitimate method of entry. One of the officers suggested I might have scared off whoever it was, but I wasn't convinced. At a certain point, it was too late at night to do much else. The police left. MJ and I were too scared to stay in the house, but we didn't have another option. We locked every door, barricaded the bedroom, and tried to get some sleep. Around 4 a.m., I woke up to the sound of creaking floorboards above me. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the noise was way too obvious. Someone was moving upstairs. I listened for a while longer and started hearing footsteps moving down the stairs, like whoever it was trying to make their way outside. Adrenaline surged through me as I grabbed the knife I'd left on the nightstand. I told MJ to stay put and bolted out of the room. I moved as quickly and as quietly as I could, but by the time I reached the front door, it was wide open. Whoever had been inside was gone. I didn't even bother calling the police again. There was nothing they'd be able to do anyway. I just made sure all the doors were locked and went to bed. The next morning, the full extent of the intrusion hit me. All of our kitchen knives were missing. All of them, which was definitely not something a rational person would do. They'd also taken smaller items, some cash, a few watches, random electronics, but it was the knives that haunted me. It felt like whoever had been inside had left a message, though I couldn't figure out what it was. When my parents came home and I told them what happened, they were surprisingly understanding. I'm not one to scare easily, never have been, so this experience honestly didn't affect me much. But even now, I sometimes acknowledge how strange it all was. I was never able to figure out how that person had gotten inside or where they had been hiding while the police searched the house. This is always going to be one of those odd things that just sticks with a person forever. This happened last spring during Blackmore Bash weekend. I go to Westbridge University, and for anyone unfamiliar, Blackmore Bash is our big spring festival, kind of like a mini Coachella. It's held every April on Blackmore Green, right near the historic Blackmore Hall. There are carnival rides, food trucks, lawn games, and a concert with a surprise headliner. The whole campus shows up. It's supposed to be the most fun day of the year. I was a sophomore then, and like most students, I stayed out late that night. Westbridge is tucked into a quiet suburban neighborhood. Ashford doesn't feel dangerous, even after dark. That's probably why I didn't think twice when I left my friend's dorm and started walking back to Hawthorne Hall alone. What I didn't know was that earlier that night, a group of masked people, maybe 10 or more, had been seen banging on doors and riding bikes around campus, including outside Hawthorne. I didn't witness it myself, but apparently it was alarming enough that people were posting about it online while it happened. I hadn't checked any of that. I was just trying to get back to my dorm. I swiped into Hawthorne Hall, stepped inside, and was heading toward the stairs when I noticed someone sitting in the lounge. That alone wasn't strange. It's a college dorm. People are up all the time. But this guy was wearing a mask. Not a COVID mask, a full black ski mask. And he wasn't doing anything, just sitting there, silent. It took me a second to process. I paused near the entrance of the lounge, frozen. It didn't make sense. I had no idea why he was there or why he was masked, but it genuinely freaked me out. Then he jumped off the couch and turned toward me in one sharp motion. I didn't even think. I ran down the hall and ducked into the nearest bathroom, locking the door behind me. I must have stayed there for 5 minutes, long enough for the hallway to go completely silent again. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but my gut was screaming. Eventually, I cracked the door open and peeked out. No one was in the hall. I figured maybe he'd left. I stepped out. I didn't want to sprint and freak myself out more, so I walked toward the other exit. That's where I saw him again. Still in the lounge, still masked. This time, he was directly across from where I had to pass. His bike leaned against the door, and a chair was wedged between the wall and the frame, like it had been jammed there on purpose. I had pepper spray on my keychain. I pulled it out and held it in front of me. I didn't aim or threaten, just showed I had it, hoping that would be enough. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I walked past him. He didn't move, didn't flinch.
It was like he wanted me to see him. Like the fear was the whole point. I didn't look back. I pushed the door open and left the building. I was halfway to Elm Street when I heard bikes behind me. 3 more masked people rode up next to me. They didn't touch me or grab me, but they heckled me, laughed, said things I couldn't make out. I know that sounds harmless, but a few of them were waving what looked like guns. That's what freaked me out most. Maybe they were fake or airsoft, but it was clear they wanted to intimidate. I tried to ignore them, but I could feel how close they were riding, just barely out of reach. I made it to Elm and texted my friend to meet me outside. He walked me back to Hawthorne, and that made me feel safer. Luckily, the bikers were gone. I didn't call the police. I wasn't hurt, but I was shaken. I can't even explain why. It wasn't until the next morning that I told my mom. She reported it, and later that night, some of my guy friends texted me saying they'd also been approached by masked riders. Some had pulled guns. No one was hurt, but it was enough for campus police to take it seriously. I've heard rumors about who they were. Some say it was just local kids trying to scare people, but it's the gun detail that sticks with me. It's likely that a group of armed non-students made their way into my dorm that night, the place I live. I've been scared to walk home alone ever.
A standalone tale from the dark archive. This story happened 2 summers ago, back when I was still dating Elise. I've kept it to myself, not because it's embarrassing, but because I didn't want to risk exposing her or her family. Now that we've been broken up for over a year, I think it's safe to talk about. At the time, Elise was working as a camp counselor for a summer program in the city. It wasn't close to home, about a 25-minute drive from her quiet, upscale neighborhood in Surrey. But she loved the job for reasons I never fully understood. I always thought it was beneath her, considering her ambitions, but I wasn't going to be a jerk and say that out loud. Her house was exactly what you'd expect for a family in that kind of area. Big yard, 3 stories, high ceilings, and enough space to host just about anything. That's why when the camp counselors were deciding where to hold their end of summer party, Elise's house was the obvious choice. I'm probably making it sound like it was her first time hosting, but it wasn't. It just happened to be my first time experiencing one since I hadn't been dating her the previous summer. Her parents were out of town that weekend. They were always out of town, really. I won't get too deep into it out of respect, but Elise's family dynamic was strange. Her relationship with her parents felt more like 3 colleagues than a family. Everything was transactional, and it was obvious to any outsider that all 3 of them were versions of the same narcissistic, insecure person, even though they hated being compared to each other. That sounds harsh. Her dad was actually pretty chill, and I kind of missed the guy. But, feelings. Anyway, the party was packed. Dozens of people crowded into the house and spilled into the backyard. The vibe was lively and fun, and most of the guests were friendly and easygoing. Well, except for one guy, Liam. From the moment he showed up, I had a bad feeling. He was loud, overly confident, and spent way too much time talking to Elise. It wasn't just small talk either, it was full-on flirting. He wasn't even trying to hide it. I felt disrespected, but I didn't want to make a scene. Elise and I had been dating for a while, and while I trusted her most of the time, she had a habit of being a little too friendly with other guys. It was a sore spot in our relationship, and I knew bringing it up would only cause problems. I didn't want to come off as insecure, so instead of confronting Liam directly, I came up with a different plan. I started acting overly friendly toward him. Every time he finished a drink, I offered him another. We talked, laughed, and before long, Liam was drinking faster than he should have. I don't exactly have the build of a heavy drinker, but the Irish and Mexican in my blood means my alcohol tolerance is absurdly high. My plan was to get him so wasted that he either made a fool of himself or passed out. Either way, problem solved. I was surprised to see the plan actually worked, and sooner than expected. By midnight, he was passed out on the basement couch, drooling into a pillow. I was smug about it.
but Elise saw right through me. She accused me of doing it on purpose, which I denied. After some tense back and forth, I admitted I may have played a small role. We argued a little, but it wasn't serious. Just another disagreement to add to the pile. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that my petty stunt had dampened the night. As the party wore on, the house got louder, messier, and more chaotic. I needed a break, so I stepped outside to get some air. The driveway was cool and quiet, a nice contrast to the noise inside. I leaned against Elise's car, staring up at the stars, when I noticed someone standing at the far edge of the property. The figure was motionless, just standing there in the dim glow of a street lamp. I squinted, trying to make out who it was. When they didn't move, I decided to approach. Probably the liquid confidence talking. I don't think I would have done it otherwise. I asked, "Hey, can I help you?" Trying to sound friendly, but firm. The figure took a few slow steps toward me, then stopped. It was definitely a man. That much I could tell, but I couldn't make out any features. It was too dark. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Are your parents home?" The question threw me. It wasn't just what he asked. It was how he said it, like he already knew the answer. Before I could respond, he repeated the question, this time name-dropping Elise's parents. He knew who they were. That turned my unease into full-blown suspicion. I lied and said my parents were inside, even though I figured he knew I didn't live there. Still, I hoped it would deter him. He nodded and said, "Okay," then turned and walked away. I expected him to head to a car or another house, but he didn't. He walked straight down the street, disappearing into the dark. I watched as long as I could, but it was too dark to see where he went. Something about it didn't sit right, but I brushed it off. I went back inside and ended up in the basement playing ping pong with a few others. Elise had a pool table upstairs, so most of the crowd was up there, leaving the basement quieter. I didn't feel like being my usual fun, social self. I preferred the quiet, where I could actually hear people talk. At some point, I heard the doorbell ring. At first, I didn't think much of it. This was a party, after all, so people coming and going wasn't unusual. But something tugged at my brain like I was missing something. As I stood there, mindlessly slapping a ping pong ball around, it hit me. Elise had told everyone to come through the back door, which didn't even have a doorbell. That meant someone had come to the front door. That wasn't supposed to happen. I excused myself from the game and headed upstairs, probably overreacting but needing an answer. As I passed Elise's room, I saw she was passed out on her bed, completely oblivious to the chaos. That's when I realized I was probably the only sober person left in the house. I turned off her light and gently shut the door. At the front door, a girl named Bella was standing there. I asked if she knew who rang the bell. She was belligerently drunk, and getting a coherent answer was like trying to reason with a squirrel. Bella wasn't exactly sharp sober, which didn't help. Eventually, she said some old guy had come to the door claiming to be a family friend, returning something he borrowed. I yelled, "You let him in?" She shrugged and wandered off, presumably to spin the roulette wheel on which random guy should be leaving with. I ran upstairs to Elise's parents' room, and my worst fears were confirmed. Drawers pulled open, jewelry boxes empty, closet ransacked. He'd robbed them. I figured he was already gone. The damage was done. I was about to head back downstairs when I saw something move in the mirror on the back of the door. Just a quick shift, like someone ducking out of view behind me. I turned, but not fast enough. He tackled me before I saw his face. Knocked the wind out of me. I couldn't breathe. He clawed at my shirt like he was trying to rip it off. I pushed him off, more panic than strength. He bolted across the room, dived out an open window, and landed on the roof with a thud. I ran to the window just in time to see him drop into the side yard and take off. I didn't chase him. I wouldn't have caught him. I just stood there, trying to breathe. He was gone. I didn't want to stay up and chaperone anymore. I didn't want to be the guy to kick everyone out either, so I called the police and asked them to help. Most of the local officers knew Elise's family, so they weren't going to arrest anyone. They came, cleared the house, and I quietly thanked them. After they left, I went downstairs, slapped Liam awake, and told him to find a way home. He threw up before calling an Uber. The next morning, Elise had to call her parents and tell them what happened. They were furious, but Elise didn't seem to care. She'd always been rebellious, brushing off authority like it was beneath her. They didn't even bother calling the police. No cameras, no evidence. They figured it was a waste of time. I still don't know how that guy knew Elise's parents weren't home. Part of me thinks he knew them somehow. Looking back, that night revealed more about Elise than I wanted to admit. Her indifference, her carelessness. It was a red flag I should have taken seriously. Hindsight as...
I've told some creepy stories before, but they're different. No haunted woods, no distant ghosts. Just the fear of home not being safe. A man smiling into your doorbell cam. A phone that rings, but no one's there. A knock from behind a sealed wall. These are the most chilling, personal accounts I've ever shared. If you want fear that sticks, long after the screen goes dark, watch this. Links on screen. Click it and ask yourself, are you really alone